The Retreat, Lacey, Part 3. Lacey had worked her fair share of bridal showers over the years. It was always a lot of setup, balloon arches, flower arrangements, name cards, and a lot of babysitting. Bridal showers equaled booze, lots of it, and Lacey had learned over the years that impending weddings brought out the crazy in people. She'd seen tears, catfights, and a fair amount of dirty laundry getting aired out. But when Meredith Linkletter walked in the room, Lacey knew she was in for it. The first red flag was that she was the first to arrive. Usually, the bride was one of the last to arrive. The well-meaning relative or friend planning the shower usually arrived with an entourage of friends and relatives turned decorators well before the bride even entered the building. Meredith was wearing a white Oscar de la Renta sundress with skinny straps and lace designed to look like so many white flowers. It hugged her svelte body perfectly. Lacey knew that this dress was well over $3,000. Her sister Leslie was quite the fashionista. Meredith had paired the dress with a strappy pair of white espadrilles and an oversized sun hat. Her diamond drop earrings glinted in the light filtering in from the window. She pursed her perfectly rouged lips as she looked around. She was still wearing her sunglasses when she entered the room. Trailing behind Meredith was an older woman, presumably her mother. While also impeccably dressed, Lacey thought she looked utterly terrified, a deer in headlights. Her eyes darted around the room until she made eye contact with Lacey, her eyebrows knit together apologetically. Oh boy, Lacey thought. Is this the room that we'll be in? Meredith asked, and there was not one drop of kindness in her voice. Not even a hello, Lacey thought. What is it that Callum always says? The first event of the season sets the tone. She put on her best customer service smile. Yes, this is where you will be set up, Daphne said, walking into the room at that moment with a stack of fresh linens. Meredith slowly walked around the perimeter of the room, taking in the stone walls and the admittedly slightly worn-for-the-wear carpeting. She pursed her lips. Is it not to your liking? Daphne asked. Meredith made a show of taking off her sunglasses and sighed a 50s movie star sigh. No, it's not. I would much prefer to be in the other, larger room, she said, gesturing to the other part of the restaurant. There's better lighting. You have got to be kidding me, Lacey thought. Unfortunately, that side of the restaurant is reserved for members of the country club, Daphne said, unflinching. Meredith stared at her blankly. You know, golfers, tennis players, swimmers, Lacey said. Meredith continued staring at her. Lacey could tell that she was not used to hearing the word no. But, Lacey said, I can assure you that this room is delightful when it's all set up. Would you like to have a drink while you're... Lacey looked to the older woman behind Meredith, hoping she'd fill in the blank. Mother, she said. Ah, yes. Would you like to sit and have a drink at the bar while your mother and I set up the decorations? Our bartender, Raffi, makes an excellent Bellini, Lacey suggested optimistically. No, I would not like that. I would like to supervise, Meredith said. But I will take a drink. Soda water with lemon, please. No ice. Lacey took a deep breath. Set the tone. Certainly, she said, and she bustled off to get the bride-to-be her drink. She secretly wished Meredith had chosen something stronger. She clearly needed to loosen up. Lacey smiled to herself as she imagined secretly spiking Meredith's drink. She often did this to get through the difficult days. She fantasized about demanding customers getting their comeuppance. Rafi was polishing glasses, and Daphne was also there behind the bar, talking to Frank, one of the regulars. She saw Lacey's frazzled expression and immediately asked what was wrong. Our lovely bride-to-be is here, Lacey said. Already? Rafi looked at her Apple Watch. The shower isn't for another 2 hours. I literally just got off the phone with her. She's making us redo the whole menu to be vegan, Daphne said, appearing next to Lacey at the bar. Frank snorted. In my day, vegan wasn't even a word, he said. It's actually quite good for you, I hear, Rafi said. If you're an asshole, she added, and the four of them shared a secretive laugh. She wants to supervise as we set up the decorations, Lacey said. She ordered the drink from Rafi, who slid it across the bar. It reminded Lacey of a scene from one of those old Western movies in a saloon, and she felt like she was about to head into her own version of a shootout. I'd like to supervise her getting her butt kicked, Daphne said. Lacey raised an eyebrow, but she couldn't help but giggle. I'm going to need you to try really hard to stay out of the bad place, Lacey said. Remember what Callum says. I know. This event sets the tone, Daphne said in a sing-song voice. Rafi giggled. Lacey looked at them pointedly. All right, relax. Have I ever steered you wrong? Daphne asked. You never steered me wrong, that's for damn sure, Frank said. He loved Daphne, and Lacey believed that this was due to the fact that Daphne was not only beautiful, but also an old man at heart. Thanks, Frank, she said, patting him on the shoulder. You'll always be my number one. She came out from behind the bar and followed Lacey into the event space. Meredith was sternly talking to her mother, brandishing green napkins in her face. Mother, I told you sage green. This is olive green. God, can't you get anything right? She asked. Her mother looked grateful to see Daphne and Lacey return. Is there a problem? Daphne asked. Meredith stared at her, clearly annoyed at the interruption. Daphne was unfazed. It was something Lacey loved about her. I don't believe we got a proper introduction. My name is Daphne. I'm going to be your captain today, Daphne said, and Lacey was reminded of the overly cheery activities directors on a cruise ship. Kill him with kindness, right? Well, is there anything you can do about this green situation? Meredith asked impatiently. Daphne didn't even blink. Well, seeing as we are a restaurant and not a party store, we unfortunately cannot, Daphne said. Lacey tried hard to suppress a giggle. One of the most impressive things about Daphne was that she could make underhanded, sometimes downright rude comments sound professional. But what I can do for you is to make sure that everyone at your party is fed, watered, and given the proper amount of sun, Daphne said, and the bride's mother honked out a laugh. Meredith grimaced at her mother, but she looked at Daphne with a cool curiosity. Ah, yes, when two dominant personalities collide, Lacey thought. Who will be the alpha? Lacey would place all of her money on Daphne any day of the week. And Lacey here is one of our in-house millennials, so she can scout the best spots for pictures, Daphne said, and Lacey inwardly groaned. They call us the dynamic duo. I assure you that we will exceed your expectations. Daphne looked Meredith dead in the eye, and Lacey could see something like respect momentarily soften Meredith's features. Point Daphne, Lacey thought. Very well, Meredith said. 2 agonizing hours later, after multiple times of setting everything up only to tear it down and start over, the guests started to arrive. Meredith was about as nice to them as she was to the hired help, and Lacey couldn't help but wonder if her friends were more attracted to Meredith's status than to her personality. All of them were straight out of New York Fashion Week. Lacey had never seen so many designer bags and expensive shoes in one place. She tried to keep her mouth from dropping open when she saw the red bottoms that the maid of honor was sporting. Made her wonder why Meredith chose the retreat of all places for her event. Sure, it was beautiful, but it tended to cater to a more rustic crowd. The guests ranged from mildly unpleasant to downright frigid. Lacey did her best to keep up with the endless flow of clear drink orders. Vodka tonics, vodka sodas, vodka waters. These women clearly placed great importance on appearances, so God forbid they should drink anything that was overly caloric or that could stain their dresses. Meredith was pleased with Callum's off-the-cuff vegan spread. Lemon and garlic hummus with fresh-baked pita bread, and an array of colorful vegetables, charred eggplant baba ganoush with hot and crisp tortilla chips, plump avocado summer rolls with fresh mango and coconut drizzle, and teeny tiny crostini bruschetta toasts. She didn't eat any of it, but she beamed as her friends oohed and awed as if Meredith herself had made each dish. There was one guest that stood out from the others. While very put together, her clothes were not as crisp, and her makeup wasn't as fresh as that of her peers. She was wearing simple wedges that Lacey thought she remembered seeing at Target. Her shiny brown hair was pulled back into a silky ponytail tied with a silk scarf. She looked uncomfortable standing amongst the rest of the women. Noticing her empty drink, Lacey approached to ask if she'd like a refill. Excuse me, Lacey said. The woman looked up at her, and Lacey saw an unmistakable flash of fear in her eyes. She relaxed once she saw that it was Lacey coming to talk to her and not one of the other women at the party. Oh, hi, she said quietly. Hi there, would you like another drink? Lacey asked. Oh no, thank you. Just one for me. Lacey nodded and was about to leave when the woman spoke again, so quietly that Lacey had to lean in to hear what she was saying. I'm sorry about my friends. They're difficult to say the least. If it makes you feel any better, they treat everyone like this, the mousy woman said. Lacey felt herself soften. I don't think it actually does, she said, and she and the woman shared a private laugh. You guys are fine, though, Lacey added as an afterthought. It was still her job to suck up to the clients, after all. I'm Julia, she said. Lacey. She instantly felt better about the whole event, knowing that there was someone there rooting for them. Daphne flitted in and out of the room, taking drink orders when Lacey was preoccupied, checking in with the mother of the bride and Meredith, and making sure the buffet spread was replenished when necessary. Lacey loved the effortless harmony of working with Daphne. They didn't even have to speak. They could silently move around one another, anticipating the other's needs. Lacey thought they were actually going to make it through the event unscathed until it was time for Meredith to open her presents. Lacey had always found this ritual odd. Who wanted everyone watching them as they opened a gift from someone? How was it possible to come off as genuine? Meredith, on the other hand, had clearly been waiting for this moment for her whole life. She perched herself on the edge of a chair in front of the grand stone fireplace. She gracefully tucked one of her ankles behind the other, folding her hands on her lap expectantly. Lacey half expected her to shout, "Give me the presents!" She and Daphne worked to move the rest of the chairs into a semicircle surrounding Meredith. The majority of the guests offered absolutely no help, and Lacey could hear Daphne making remarks under her breath. The women, of course, were totally oblivious. Lacey and Daphne may as well have been invisible. The only one who made any move to help was Julia. Another point for Julia, Lacey thought. She made a mental note to bring her a drink on the house when this was all over. Maybe they could exchange information. Lacey was always looking for new friends. Meredith had requested that Daphne rebox all of the gifts that she opened, while Lacey was expected to record the information about whom each gift was from. Wasn't this supposed to be the responsibility of one of her friends? Her mother? Lacey wondered. She looked over at Meredith's mother. She looked as though she had run a marathon. She was quite literally wilting into the chair. Nope, she definitely can't be trusted with this responsibility, Lacey thought. As the women got settled in their chairs, Daphne told Lacey that she was going to go check on the rest of the waitstaff in the main dining room. The event had taken more bandwidth than anticipated, so it was lucky that Shanna, another one of the waitresses, was able to come in early. Lacey nodded and she took her place in the seat directly to the right of Meredith, notebook and pen poised and ready. The first gift that Meredith chose to open set the tone for the rest. It was a stunning quartet of Waterford crystal goblets. Lacey had to suppress a gasp as Meredith took each one out of its snug compartment and twirled it in the light. The women oohed and awed, clapping and chattering amongst one another. Lacey recorded the gift and the gift giver's name. She almost felt bad for the other women having to follow such an extravagant gift. Almost. Daphne re-entered the room just in time, but she looked off. She robotically took the box of Waterford crystal goblets from Meredith, who instructed her to seal the box back up. But Daphne didn't move. She looked white as a ghost. Noticing everyone looking at her, she stepped back and turned around. Lacey's interest was piqued. As much as she and Callum liked to tease her about the bad place, it took a lot to ruffle Daphne's feathers. A lot. She wondered if Raffi and Shanna were going down in the main dining room. She craned her neck to see through the glass-paneled doors into the dining room. Nope. Raffi was doing inventory on the liquor bottles, and Shanna was leaning against the bar, blatantly texting while her 4 tables ate peacefully. Lacey rolled her eyes. She had a feeling that the waitresses at the retreat would be hit or miss this season. She returned her attention to Daphne, who was still holding the box of goblets. She was looking down as if she was peering into the box. But Lacey realized she was looking at a phone. Now this was odd. Daphne rode the waitresses' asses about having their phones out on a shift. She would be throwing a fit if she saw Shanna right now. Lacey wondered what could possibly have been so important that it was tearing Daphne's attention away from the job at hand. And not just a job. The job that set the tone for the rest of the season. She was about to get up and go over to her when Meredith tapped her on the shoulder. "Julia," she said. Lacey looked at her, confused. The next present is from Julia, Meredith said, talking to her like she was an invalid. Of course, Lacey said, shaking her head. Head in the game. Lacey peeked over at Julia. She was shifting uncomfortably in her seat. She looked like she wanted to be anywhere else. Lacey could feel her stomach tense up, as if preparing herself for an uncomfortable situation. Daphne was still looking at her damn phone. Lacey needed her moral support. She cleared her throat, but no one noticed. Julia was staring at the ground. Meredith carefully pried the lid off the tiny white box. It was a delicate gold bracelet with a tiny drop of diamond at its center. It was understated and elegant. Lacey was puzzled. Why was Julia acting so nervous? Lacey would be thrilled, no, overwhelmed, if one of her friends gave her something like that. So why was Meredith frowning? A hush fell over the room. Lacey held her breath. What was happening? This isn't Cartier, Meredith said. She was still staring down at the bracelet. Yeah, so I'm really sorry, Meredith, Julia said. I couldn't find the exact one you were looking for, so I got something very similar. The man at Tiffany's told me, Tiffany's? You got this at Tiffany's? Meredith asked, a twinge of disgust in her voice. Lacey wanted to slap her across the face. Yes, Julia says. Meredith was silent. Lacey let it go on for one agonizing minute. She was about to suggest moving on to the next gift when Meredith spoke again. I guess I'm just a little confused as to why you couldn't find it, Meredith said, and now she was looking straight at Julia, who was visibly shrinking in her gaze. I sent you a direct link to it when I assigned the gifts. She assigned her gifts? Lacey was incredulous. This woman was a piece of work. I'm sorry, I must not have seen it, Julia said. Bullshit, Meredith fired back. Now, Meredith, her mother said. Don't, Meredith said firmly. Her mother snapped her mouth shut. You're lying to me. I saw that you opened the document, Julia, so what really happened? Julia squirmed. She looked like she was about to cry, but instead she took a deep breath. Fine, Meredith. I couldn't afford it. There. Are you happy? She asked, crossing her arms over her chest. No, I'm not, Meredith said. I gave you the most inexpensive item on the list, Julia, she said matter-of-factly. Daphne, Lacey thought, panic rising. I'm sorry, but $700 is not cheap for most people, Julia said. You've had plenty of time to save up, Meredith said. When did I send you that link? 6 months ago? She asked. Well, excuse me for not wanting to spend every spare dime that I have on you, Julia shouted. I didn't even want you to be in my wedding, Meredith shouted back, and she stood up. I don't want to be in your stupid wedding. I don't even want to be your stupid friend. Julia was standing now, too, and it looked like the two women were about to attack one another. Lacey stood up and jumped in between them, holding her arms out as if she was warding off stray dogs. Daphne! Lacey shouted. Lacey's shout had stunned the room into silence. Daphne turned around slowly. She made eye contact with Meredith before slamming the box of Waterford crystals on the floor so forcefully that Lacey wondered if she imagined the floor shaking. There was another moment of shocked silence before all hell broke loose.